mTracker 3D and mO2 in Motion 5 is a powerful combination. As you can see here, we've got this cube track perfectly in place. And what in the world is that? Mother tracker, that's crazy. Just kidding, it's not real. That came from mO2 in Motion 5 with mTracker 3D. I guess I'll show you how to do it now. Maybe they'll take me with them. All right, welcome back. In this session, we're gonna be looking at Motion 5, mTracker 3D, and some mO2. Why don't we go ahead and look in Motion 5 and see what we can do with mTracker 3D and Motion natively. All right, so first off, here is the video that we are going to look at really quickly. So let's go ahead and open this up. And here we are in Apple Motion. So here is what our final project looks like. We've got the 3D objects floating around the girl as she strolls down the street here. So really quickly, why don't we go ahead and open this up? You can see here that we have our camera and we have several 3D groups with USDZ models placed inside of those groups. If we open up our footage, you can see that mTracker 3D has been tracked onto the clip, and this is where we set our different points for our USDZ models. So you can see here we use the ground, and then we just track those, put them in place, and then push them up on the y-axis, rotate it a bit, and push them forward in Z-space. We also, inside of our 3D group on our USDZ models, you will notice we have the Oscillate, and that's just giving it a little bit of a bounce behavior to look as though they're floating on over the street there. All right, so now why don't we open up Motion and let's look at something a little more in depth, and we're gonna be using mO2. Now, what is mO2? Some of you may not know. mO2 is a real 3D rendering engine built exclusively for Motion 5 and Final Cut Pro 10. Now, the benefit with using mTracker 3D and mO2 is the fact that you can load your own models as well. So you can really fine tune what you want that scene and feel to look like. All right, so in this project, you can see that we have our footage. I have already set a mask around me and set keyframes so that the tracker will not take any of the movement that I'm giving with my hands and rotating my body and such. It's not going to be paying attention to any of that. It will only be tracking the scene that we're in, because that is, after all, what we want. We've also added a contrast filter so that when we're tracking, we have that extra bit of contrast so that the tracker is able to see all of the details there in the road. We are going to turn this off because obviously this is not the final look that we want, but for tracking, it is nice to have that high contrast. So with your footage selected, you can go into Filters, go down to MotionVFX, mTracker 3D. We're going to apply that. You can see here that we have Track the Footage button on our canvas there in our viewer, and then also over in the inspector. Both buttons do the exact same thing. Go ahead and hit track to start tracking your footage. Something else that's really nice about this tracker is the fact that you don't have to set any sort of points. You don't have to worry about cleaning up any points that didn't track well on the back end after the tracking is finalized. It is literally one button and you're done, and then you can get right to work. So it's really nice how MotionVFX has made this so simple to use. All right, so now that we are done tracking, we can come up and turn our contrast and our mask back off. So you see now that we have this target icon option. Now, in the example that I showed earlier, we placed a cube down here on the ground. But for this, I think we're only going to work on our big spaceship. So why don't we come by and we're going to make a turn, and let's go ahead and use our target icon. You can see we have our gizmo here that has tracked everything. So I think I'm going to use the sky actually as my point. I'm going to hold shift down because I know that my ship that we're using, I want it to be obviously sitting upright in orientation. So while holding shift, I'm going to just select the point here in the sky by clicking, and let's go ahead and turn our target back off. And you can see now that we have that track perfectly there in the sky. Let's come back and you'll see. And if we wanted to, again, we don't have time to do it, but we could select this, and if we hold command down, we'd place our cube, and that cube would be sitting right there. And then we would also have our tracker there in the sky. But again, we don't want to do that. So to get rid of that, we're just going to click away again, and I'm going to hold shift down, and I'll just pop that right back there in the sky. And we're good to go. All right, so let's turn our target icon off. Then we want to go over to copy track. This is where we're copying all that information so that we can paste it into mO2. So copy track, it was that quick. Let's go to library. We are going to go into our generators, MotionVFX, mO2. Let's bring that in over top of everything else. When working in mO2, you always need to use your adjust item tool. So there we go. I'm going to go ahead and select the builder mode in mO2. Let's open our inspector, and we are going to add mTracker 3D data. All right, let's delete our default camera because whenever you have the mTracker 3D data scene, it has a camera already. So we are going to simply delete that. And then let's change our background to alpha channel. And we will see now that we have our mO2 is over top, and we have our 3D group gizmo there placed in the same position that we selected our track. Great. So the next thing we need to do is add a spaceship. Easy enough. Let's go into add. We're going to go to add model. I have already imported one that I want to use in my imported section, and it is Sci-Fi Destroyer. So let's go ahead and select that. Now, obviously, it is way too big. We're going to pick up Sci-Fi Destroyer, drag it into our 3D group. We want to reset all of our parameters on the Sci-Fi Destroyer. There we go. And I'm going to bring that scale way down. I mean, way down. There we go. That's looking better already, isn't it? So why don't I turn the beauty mode back on so you can see what that's actually going to look like. All right, there we go. And you can see here that it is tracked perfectly in the sky. I mean, just a perfect track. I love it. So I do want to mention that this model was gotten from Turbo Squid, and we can provide a link to this model if you would like. All right, so the next thing I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and actually turn this on so that we can really see it. I think I need to go into my environment now, and I'm going to select an environment that looks a little bit more like the environment we have. So we're going to go into cloudy, and you can see here the playground sky is very similar to the sky that we had on this day that we filmed. So let's select that. Yeah, and you can already see that we have a little bit more cohesive look there. Great. Now, while we're in that environment, we can go over to color correction, and we can make some adjustments to better match our scene. So as you can see, it was kind of a flat day that day, so I'm going to bring my gamma up a bit just to make our Sci-Fi Destroyer a little bit more cohesive with our scene. We can go into hue, and we can make some adjustments there as well. and we definitely don't want to go too magenta there. Of course, you can go in and you can adjust brightness, saturation, etc., but I like the way this ship is looking so far, so I think we're okay. Why don't we just check the look as we scrub through. It's just kind of floating there in the sky. It's really nice. I love the motion blur is already added from mO2. Really, really great. All right, cool. Why don't we add a light now? Let's go in and we're going to add, and we will add a light. Let's add a sphere. We're going to add this into our 3D group. And again, we want to reset our parameters on our light. I'm going to turn render shape off. And I'm going to just go ahead and grab my 3D gizmo, and we can just start fine-tuning and making adjustments on where we want that light to be. We're going to go back in Z space. There, that's much better. So let's turn that light off, and then you can see kind of what it's doing, just to make it a little bit more interesting looking. And honestly, we could probably go back a little bit more. Why don't we enable our shadows there? Perfect. All right, that's looking really, really good. Now, something else that I thought, then you can see our light back there, which is kind of cool. So it is tracked and it is matched onto our 3D group. So you can see that that light is going to move along with our ship. Really nice. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to do is actually animate our ship a bit so that it looks as though it's floating forward, and then we're gonna have it take off into the sky. So why don't we set keyframes on our sci-fi destroyer now on X, Y, Z, rotation, etc., so that they will just begin here on this frame. And then as we move forward, we're going to see that we can have that animated. So let's see, I'd actually like this to be back a bit. So we've got it there, and then we will have it just kind of moving a bit forward like this, and we can have it rotating just a bit as though it's getting ready to take off. So let's see how that's starting to look. It's very, very subtle, but it's enough to be fun, right? Just a bit of movement. It's getting ready to take off there, and then we can move it forward a bit more, and we can still continue to have that ship going forward, and it is still having a bit of that rotation as though it's getting ready to take off. Why don't we turn it this way a bit now so that it is getting ready. It is on its way. There we go. Really nice. And then we will set from here out. We can see at 22:21 we don't have anything going on, so we're going to set that as our takeoff point. So I'm going to grab Z, and we're just going to push that forward, and that motion blur is added, and it takes off into space. Nice. All right, let's check out how that looks so far. Just a bit of rotation. It's getting ready to go. I'm leaving you. I do not want to be with you, and see you later. Awesome. I love it. All right, this is looking really, really good so far. So now why don't we add a light that's gonna affect the back of our ship. So let's go into add, let's go to light, and we will add a sphere. Let's bring that into our group here, our sci-fi group. We're going to reset all of our parameters. Let's turn our light radius down and our intensity down quite a bit. And we're going to bring this to the back of our ship here. Let's bring that up just a bit, and let's continue to mess with our intensity until we see that it's right there at the back of the ship. Now, since this is in our sci-fi destroyer group, the light follows the keyframes that we set. Perfect. So I'm gonna set a keyframe on my intensity here. Let's bring that down to 0. We're gonna bring our light radius down, and we have set a keyframe on 0 on our intensity. And then as our ship begins to take off, we can have that intensity slowly build as though that ship is taking off. So now you'll see that movement on the intensity. It's revving up. Here we go. And there we go. There goes the ship. Nice. I like it a lot. I think the intensity might still be a little strong. So we've got that set to go to 38. That might be a bit much. Why don't we bring that down to, say, 25? And let's try 20. All right, I think that looks really good. I also want the color to be a little bit closer to the lights that we have here. I'm gonna go ahead actually and bring my sphere right there to the center. That looks good. All right, let's go into our color. Let's use our color picker and let's select this kind of purple look. And then we can see here, we've got that set up and it takes off. There it goes. All right. Really, really nice. I like that a lot. All right, so now why don't we do some final looks to everything. First off, I'm going to go into mO2 and I'm going to open up my display and let's set our blend mode to light wrap. And you'll see it's very, very subtle, but there's just a little bit of softening happening now on our ship, and it helps it blend into our scene a bit better. So while we're looking on our kind of overall final look, why don't we add something that will help our ship kind of appear as though it's in the background there. We noticed that our clouds are kind of hazy, so I think it would look really good if we had a little bit of a haze look and feel over our ship. In order to do that, come into Add Object, let's go to Generators, and we are going to add a soft gradient. All right, the next step is going to be increase the radius of our gradient quite a bit. We are now going to add an image mask to our gradient, and we are going to use mO2 as our source. Now, when you do this, mO2 is deactivated. That's okay, just turn mO2 back on. And then we are going to go back into our soft gradient, over into properties, and let's bring our opacity way down. So we can now see that we have a bit of a haze over our ship, and I think that that does make it appear as though it's kind of off in the distance there. Now, let's bring our soft gradient back a bit more. Let's go back to where we know that that ship kind of comes into the frame here. So around there, there we go. That should work better. And boom, now you see we've got that haze on our ship, and it's going to move forward and take off just like we said earlier. Cool. The final thing I'd like to do, let's collapse both of our groups. We are going to make one new group. This is our final overall group here, and we are going to add mFilmLook to give it its final overall cohesive look. I really like this first preset. We are going to mess with it a little bit, so let's go into our letterbox. Let's bring that down so it's not so harsh. I also think our off-screen flare could get turned off. I believe our grain might be a bit too harsh on this one, and I believe that our vignette is also a bit too strong. So let's go in and we're just going to bring that out and bring the intensity down a bit as well. Oh yeah, I like that a lot. And it looks as though that ship is a bit further off in the distance now. All right, now why don't we take a look at the final exported version. Mother tracker! That's crazy. Just kidding, it's not real. That came from mO2 in Motion 5 with mTracker 3D. I guess I'll show you how to do it now. Maybe they'll take me with them. All right, thank you so much for watching. We hope that you have found this information useful. We really encourage you, if you are a Final Cut Pro 10 user and you haven't gotten into Motion 5 yet, take a look at it. It's incredible. It's so much fun to use, and it so easily integrates with Final Cut Pro 10.